So I don't know if you've been following this or not, but a couple of Republican lawmakers in a pair of states are gearing to take on porn websites. To talk a little bit about that this morning, and what they're saying is that these are, quote, public health hazards that have reached an epidemic proportion. To talk a little bit about it, it is attorney Byron Henry. We've had him on the show before, and he joins us again on the wake-up call. Thanks for being with us this morning. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right, so in Utah, they're introducing legislation that would allow Utah residents who feel that they are, quote-unquote, addicted to porn to sue the websites where they watch it. And according to the senator, he says, I'm trying to kind of track the same path that was taken against tobacco 70 years ago. Maybe I just haven't read about it, but we know that the tobacco companies purposely doctored evidence, doctored medical reports, doctored scientific reports to say that, cigarettes aren't addicting, and in some cases, if you smoke menthols while you're sick, it's good for you, and all sorts of stuff like that. I've never heard anybody, come out and say, at least from the porn industry, hey, porn's good for you. Do they have, is there a way that they could sue them following that track of the tobacco industry that you think of?
Well, there's a couple things to keep in mind. First of all, just a general reminder that pornographic or hardcore materials, watching it, whether it's in your home or at a theater or whatnot, does enjoy First Amendment protection. But it is a lowered First Amendment protection, and the way the Supreme Court gets there is mainly through historical and originalism analysis with respect to the Constitution when it was ratified. So there's First Amendment protection for your ability to view and the ability to sell and distribute pornographic information, whether it's by the web or magazines or movies or whatnot. But it is lowered. Mm-hmm. The second thing to think about is the Supreme Court has said that you can further regulate so much as zone out or ban some sexual-oriented businesses if you have studies or proof that the secondary effects are harmful, meaning to property values, to crime rates and whatnot. So what you'd first have to get, and I think you're onto something here about whether or not it's a health hazard, is simply you'd have to have studies showing that being addicted to, or first of all, that it's addictive, which you could probably get some psychological studies pretty easily to say it's addictive, mm-hmm. and that the secondary effects or the harmful effects to society, family, and whatnot would have to be measurable and pronounced. And then you'd start getting into the realm where you could actually regulate it, including to consider it a hazard and possibly allow someone to sue. And just a side note, the fact that you could do this in your own home as opposed to in a theater doesn't really matter, because that we regulate what some would consider very mild or innocuous controlled substances, regardless of whether or not you do them in your own home and regardless of whether or not we think it actually affects someone around you. We've already made a determination that even marijuana use at the federal level is subject to absolute prohibition because of the harmful effects, not just to you, but to society. So I think there is some precedent for further study, but you're going to have to come up with studies showing, number one, that it's addictive, and they know it's addictive when they put it out there, and two, the harmful effects both to yourself, your family, and society in general are going to have to be measurable and pronounced in order to get your foot in the door on something like this.
Okay, so let me throw this out here. We have a lottery here in Oregon, the Oregon State Lottery. They know that video gambling and like video poker and the like, they know that it's addictive. They admit that it's addictive, so much so that they run, public service announcements saying that if you have a gambling addiction, so on and so forth. Why then, if it would be allowable to sue a video porn site over the things that you have said, why then could I not, if I were somebody that was addicted to gambling, sue the Oregon State Lottery and say, you guys got me hooked on video poker. It ruined my life. It's ruined my family. It's destroyed me. Why can't I turn around and sue the lottery?
Well, gambling is a great example because it actually makes the point that the state can actually ban vices prohibited. I mean, it's the fact the state allows the lottery, and the reason the state runs the lottery is because generally gambling is prohibited. Texas, gambling is prohibited except for the lottery. There's no online gambling, no horse betting, no betting on sports teams. So gambling is a good example of a vice that we've decided, even if you're doing it in your own home with your own money on your computer, is something that we just don't want to allow as a society because of its harmful effects. Now, the state's a different story running it because generally a state enjoys immunity. So you're not going to be able to sue the state regardless of whether it's addictive or not. So the state is not a good example, but private parties running lotteries or scratch-offs or machines that are addictive and basically have you sit there all day long, in around Texas, it's in Oklahoma, you have the Indian casinos, which is a whole other story because they have their own right and immunity to run casinos on their own land. But I think gambling's a perfect example. The state can allow it to the extent it deems preferable. And so in this case, in Texas, it's banned altogether. And if pornography, whether it's in your own home or out in public, is very similar vice to gambling, you could argue that Texas should have the right to ban pornography as well, or prohibit it or regulate it. Now, being able to sue them is another step than being able to regulate them. That just has to do with the standard of proof. And if the state doesn't give them immunity from suit, like a lot of states have done for gun manufacturers, then it's just a standard tort case in court by proving that they had the knowledge they needed to show that it was likely to happen and that their product was designed in a way to cause people to become addictive such that it caused people harm to themselves or to others. That's basically the standard, and that's just a standard tort case in court. And it's difficult to make because most people have choices along the way that break the chain of causation where they decide to do X or they decide to do Y. But all you need is a few medical studies saying once you get addicted to this, it's no longer a voluntary choice. And like with tobacco and other drugs, and then you might have your foot in the door for a lawsuit.
So, I don't know. This keeps popping up in my head. It's not okay for a private party or a private entity to destroy your life, but it's perfectly legal for the state to take all of your money, destroy your life, leave you penniless without a family and anything else. It's okay if they do it. They have immunity.
Well, the state is the sovereign, so you have to have permission to sue the state for something. And, of course, that's one reason why gambling isn't legal in, the majority of jurisdictions in the United States. Now, the lottery is a different story. I agree that's gambling, and it has been even states that prohibit gambling do allow the lottery, and they've done a balancing test where the benefits of the lottery and the ability to use the money for certain things outweighs the detriment. Plus, it's state-run and not private-run, so they argue that they basically have full regulatory control of their own lottery system. But, yes, the state has immunity. So if the state ruins your life through the lottery, assuming you could make that case and make it stick, you couldn't sue the state. But private parties are a different story, and I think gambling is a good corollary to the pornography discussion that we're having because it is generally a vice, which someone could argue, well, who am I harming by playing a online poker game with someone in the Netherlands on my computer at home with my own money?
Right.
And the bottom line is that that's too bad because the state can outright ban it or regulate it heavily.
So, on its just prima facie evidence, do you think that this is something that would actually stand up in court?
I'm not familiar enough with studies to help back it up from an expert standpoint. And here's about 20 years ago, or a little bit longer ago, 20 to 30 years ago, the Supreme Court relied on a lot of studies that showed that sexually oriented businesses, in the public sphere, like in New York and different places, had harmful, measurable secondary effects. So that allowed New York and other cities to basically have the ability with this evidence to zone them in remote places. And that's why in a lot of areas, the commercial areas or the warehouse areas is where you find a lot of the adult businesses or sexual-oriented businesses. So I believe you would need to get down the road more on research and heavy study. I mean, common sense tells me that pornography is probably generally, like you said, people aren't saying this is good for society. Let's have more of it. But you need some expert studies to measure the amount of man-hours we're losing, families that are destroyed, jobs, hospital visits, different things, psychological problems that come out of prolonged exposure to pornography in order to, I think, make a case stand up in court. And I think we're a little bit away from that. This may be the first step.
All right. Hey, Byron, it's great having you back on the show again. Happy New Year to you. We look forward to our next chat. You take care, my friend.
You too, anytime.
All right.